guys, welcome back to the Cocco channel and to another horror story. I'm so excited to be sitting down and doing some of these with you guys again. I know it's my most requested video. If you missed last one that I did, it was my best friend was a savage. She was. If you haven't seen that story or heard it, seen it, there's a whole playlist of these horror stories, whether it's the retail horror stories or the dating horror stories. I think that's about it for right now. Those are all in a playlist linked in my description box always. So today we are going to talk about something a little bit more serious, and it was a horror story. So as you guys know, my best friend's name is Christina. Back in the day, I called her KP, so if you hear me say KP, that's Christina. Her initials were KP, and so that's just what I called her for Kim Possible. Anyways, so her and I were in a new middle school in 8th grade, which we touched on a little bit in the last horror story. And so her and I didn't have, I don't think, any classes together, oddly enough, in 8th grade. We always had the same subject at the same time, though, and so it was really weird. Her and I were attached at the hip. Like, we would meet after every single class. We obviously had lunch together, went to and from school together. Her and I were just like the two best friends that anyone ever had, and we still are, which is so amazing to have that in your life. But so like I said, we were attached at the hip, and there was a teacher that, let me back up, and Christina doesn't mind me saying this because it was inherently obvious, that she developed quicker than a lot of the other girls in our class. She was a busty little 8th grader, I'm not gonna lie, and she hated it. She absolutely hated it. She got unwanted attention from a lot of unwanted people, and a lot of girls not give her a hard time necessarily, but there were just always comments like, I wish I had those. And even from myself, I was like waiting for my chi-chis to come in. I was like dying. Everybody got them before me, and then they came in and I hated them. Anyways, so some of the unwanted attention was from a teacher. And if I knew then what I know now, I would have reported him, and so would she. We've talked about this in length in our 20 years of friendship. Like, man, I just don't know why we didn't. And we didn't talk to our parents about it, and that was another thing I wish we would have, because he was wildly inappropriate. He was a science teacher. Again, I'm not gonna say any names because I don't know anything about him. I don't know if he's ever done anything. I don't know, you know, any of that. I'm not gonna say what school it was or anything like that, but he was a science teacher, and he was her science teacher. I had a completely different science teacher, but we had science at the same time, and the doors like opened right next to each other, if that makes sense. So the classes were right next to each other and the doors opened, so we always left at the same time. And Christina and I were the type of friends where we would hold hands like leaving. It wasn't anything like, you know, it was sisters. That's exactly how Christina and I looked at each other. And so, you know, for some reason, she would always stand there waiting for me, or no matter who was like standing waiting for who, like we would hold out each other's hand, and like, I don't even think we laced fingers, but you know, we just held hands because we loved each other, and not in, you know, a gay way, like just in a sister way. And so, it used to drive her teacher mad. I could like see the rage in his face. And so there were a couple times where he would hold her to talk to her in class, and I'd be sitting there for like ever, and everyone would leave and the door would shut. And so, you know, I would go in and he's like, "Are you in my class?" He would get mad if I would go in there and try and get her. I was like, dude, pervert, you know, like I could, just the way you could just tell by the way he would look at Christina and, you know, stuff like that. He was just a little pervert. And just the way he would look at her, it makes my skin freaking crawl just thinking about it. So there were a few instances where he tried to separate Christina and I. And so I want to do a whole story on this trip. For our 8th grade trip, this new school that we were in was so nice, you guys. It was beautiful. It was brand new. It was the very first year. And so for the 8th grade graduating class, you know, back in the day, it was 6, 7, 8 was middle school, 9 you went into high school. and it was separate from elementary. It seems like nowadays all of the elementary and middle is like combined. Even my son's school, where he goes for preschool, they have all the way up till 8th grade. And so anyways, they did a 8th grade graduation trip, and it was to Catalina Island, which from Las Vegas, it was like super cool. We took a bus, which involves Scuba Steve, and that'll be a whole other story. And so he was one of the volunteers on that trip. Oh, and I wish he wouldn't have been. He was terrible. He was so mean. He didn't want any of the kids to have like fun. And I know that sounds like such a whiny, like little kid thing to say. Like, he didn't want us to have fun and wouldn't let us, like, we weren't trying to be maniacs. Like I said, we weren't really bad kids. Movie theater aside, you know, we weren't. We had really good grades. And Christina and I busted our butts and fundraised this entire trip selling candy bars. Like, we paid for it ourselves by, you know, doing the candy bar thing. And so there was an incident where he got me kicked out of the campfire. I won't tell you how, because it's actually kind of embarrassing. Maybe I should. So I have a unique talent where I can make myself burp. I don't do it anymore, but I used to burp the ABCs, and I could literally like speak burp. Such a waste of talent. And so I was like doing it at the campfire, like they were telling me different things to say, and back then you don't care, like you weren't embarrassed or anything like that. And like I said, there was like a huge group of us that were really, really close. And so I remember this so vividly. He didn't say anything to me this entire time that I'm doing this, and he goes, "Do it one more time." And so I was thinking, oh, you know, maybe he's gonna get a little bit cool, you know, and so I did it. He got up and grabbed me by the arm and took me away from the fire, and I was like flipping out. I was like calling him all kinds of names, and I was like, "Get your hands off of me." I was like flipping out. And then the vice principal was there, and she got involved, and she was like, you know, "Get your hands off of her." And she took me to like the nurse's office, because by this time I was so upset, and I like hate to say the word hate. I loathed him, and I just knew he was trying to be inappropriate with my friend, and she was like really weirded out by him. She hated going into his class, and it just made her a little bit more like self-conscious about herself, you know, and it made me so mad, because we're of course protective over each other. And so he got me kicked out of the campfire. I tried to talk to the vice principal about it, who was literally the coolest lady ever. She was super sweet. And I was trying to tell her that he was inappropriate, and she told me she was gonna look into it. She never did, or nothing ever came of it. I don't know if she ever reached out to Christina. I don't remember. But this is kind of like a lesson in, you know, asking these kinds of questions, especially like with your, I mean, I know that the sons get, like when you hear news stories of like teachers, it's a lot of the times it's like a female teacher and a young boy who's like, you know, they're corrupted easier because they're more sexually like aware than girls. But I really wish that Christine and I would have said something. Mind you, this has been 20 years now. But I really do, and I wish that the vice principal would have at least followed up with us, even though we were leaving that year. I almost feel like because it was a brand new school, they weren't gonna have something like that come out. Yeah, so I just really encourage you to keep your eyes out for that. You don't really hear or think that that's like something that's in your town or your school or anything like that. And we were, like I said, we were good kids, and she wasn't like a provocative dresser. She literally wore a t-shirt every single day just because she knew she couldn't wear anything else. Anytime she wore like, you know, I remember her trying to wear a button up, and I think she got in detention for it. So it wasn't even worth it for her, because she was just a large busted young girl, you know. She just always wore t-shirts. And so it's not like she was a tease or weird or anything like that. And even if you are a tease at that age, a grown man or woman should know better anyways, regardless. So I just, you know, that is a huge lesson for Christina and I. And she has talks with her boys regularly who are older, and I will be sure to keep my eye out and that conversation open with my kids. My parents never talked to me about stuff like that, and you know, that wasn't as big of a thing back then. you know, 20 years ago as it is right now, or at least recently. And so I don't know if it was something that they didn't even think of or what the situation was, but I never got a conversation about like somebody touching you inappropriately or, you know, anything like that. My parents never gave me a talk like that. So I would just encourage you. I know that there will be probably mixed feelings on if we should have said something or if we should still now, because there's no telling where he is or what he did. But I don't even think, not that it wouldn't matter, but it wouldn't hold up because of the statute of limitation. And he never like physically did anything. He was just really inappropriate. He used to like you know what, her all the time. He was such a sicko. Ugh. And we were trying to remember his name. I obviously wouldn't use it, but we couldn't even agree on what it was. So that is just something I wanted to bring to the table, bring some light to. Maybe that helps somebody, or, you know, remind somebody, or if you have a story to share as well. This is a safe place to do that. Everyone here on my channel is super sweet and has stories of their own that they've shared in the past, not specifically about teachers being inappropriate, but you know what I mean. We've talked about domestic violence in the past. I hate to say it, but I was a victim of domestic violence before I was with my husband. So we have touched on serious topics in the past. So I'm gonna leave it here for that video. I thank you so much for watching. If you're new, hello and welcome. My name is Brittany Cocco. You are watching the Cocco channel. Please subscribe if you are not already, and I will catch you guys in my next video.